She had always been a woman of determination. Her life was a story of hard work, intelligence, and persistence. She had built her company from scratch, investing years of her energy and countless sleepless nights to make it one of the most successful businesses in the city. People often saw her as a symbol of ambition and achievement. Today, however, she was simply a person on a mission, needing to withdraw a sum of money from her bank to make an important charitable contribution. The morning was bright and clear. She walked briskly through the streets of downtown, her heels clicking lightly against the pavement. The city was waking up, and so was she, fueled by purpose and focus. She had a meeting later in the day, and this stop at the bank was meant to be quick. As she approached the entrance of the bank, she noticed the glass doors reflecting her image. She straightened her posture and smiled, ready to handle her business efficiently. The moment she stepped inside, she felt a subtle shift in energy. The bank was quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by a strange stillness that made her senses alert. She had visited this branch many times before. She knew the tellers by name and had always been treated professionally. Today, however, something felt different. A young teller greeted her with a polite smile, but there was hesitation in her eyes. The manager, a middle-aged man with a neatly pressed suit, looked up from his desk and froze momentarily, as if uncertain about how to respond to her presence. She approached the counter, keeping her calm and confidence intact. Her business attire reflected professionalism, and her demeanor radiated authority. Yet she immediately noticed the manager's eyes flicker with discomfort. He shifted papers around his desk, avoiding direct eye contact. She handed over her identification and politely asked to make a withdrawal. It was a routine request, simple and clear, and there should have been no problem. Instead of a straightforward response, she received a vague answer. The manager hesitated and mumbled something about needing to check some policies. She asked for clarification, her tone calm but firm. She was used to handling challenging situations, but this felt different. She had faced tough negotiations, boardroom conflicts, and financial crises, but now it seemed like she was being judged for reasons entirely unrelated to her banking needs. Her mind began to process what was happening. She had encountered discrimination in her life, but she had learned to navigate it with grace and strategy. She had never let anyone underestimate her, and she had always turned obstacles into opportunities. Today, she could feel the subtle undertone of bias, and it reminded her that no matter how far she had come, society's prejudices could still surface in unexpected places. She looked around the bank. There were a few other customers waiting, and some of them had noticed the unusual interaction. A man in a business suit whispered to his colleague, and a woman with a stroller glanced in her direction. She could feel their curiosity, their silent judgment of the situation unfolding. Despite this, she remained composed. She knew that losing her temper would only give power to the bias she was experiencing. Her strength lay in patience and measured action. The manager finally cleared his throat and explained that certain verification steps needed to be taken before her withdrawal could be processed. His words were technically correct but unnecessary, given her history and account standing. She asked for details about these verification steps and provided any information required. As she did so, she observed the staff around her. Some were whispering, some were glancing at her nervously, and one young teller seemed unsure of where to look. She noticed the discomfort in their eyes, the uncertainty in their gestures. It was subtle yet unmistakable. Even though she was frustrated, she maintained a friendly and professional smile. She had learned that calm authority often achieved more than anger. She engaged politely with the staff, answered their questions, and made sure everything she provided was accurate and complete. Her attention to detail was impeccable, and she noticed that this behavior was starting to shift the atmosphere slightly. Some staff members seemed relieved that she was handling things so efficiently, while others remained tense. The CEO also took note of the other customers. Some were observing silently, perhaps unsure of what they were witnessing. She understood that her presence alone could be intimidating in a setting where people were used to a different type of customer. She carried herself with dignity, aware that she represented not only herself, but also countless others who might face similar challenges in spaces where bias could appear. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that she had faced many challenges in her life. This was not the first time she had been underestimated or treated unfairly. She had always relied on her intelligence, preparation, and calm demeanor to navigate such moments. Today would be no different. She decided to observe quietly, gather the facts, and respond strategically. Her mind was sharp, noting every word, every gesture, and every reaction. While waiting, she thought about the years of hard work that had brought her here. She remembered the early days of her company, the long hours, the sacrifices, and the doubts from others. Each memory fueled her resolve. She knew her value, and she knew that respect was something that could not be demanded with anger but earned and commanded through action. As she waited, the tension in the bank remained, a silent acknowledgement that something unusual was unfolding. The staff were beginning to realize that she was not an ordinary customer. They were witnessing a woman who carried herself with authority, intelligence, and grace. Their hesitation and unease were becoming more pronounced as she calmly continued to manage the interaction, never allowing frustration to show. The atmosphere was charged, a quiet tension that made the seconds stretch longer than usual. The CEO's presence alone was enough to disrupt the usual routine of the bank. People started to take notice. A few customers whispered among themselves. Others watched in silence, sensing that they were witnessing an incident that would not end quietly. Her thoughts were focused, yet she remained outwardly composed. She reviewed the account details in her mind, considered the steps she had taken so far, and planned her next moves. She knew the importance of timing and strategy in these moments. She understood that the way she handled the situation now could set a precedent, not only for herself, but also for others who might face similar experiences. Time passed slowly. She stayed polite, professional, and calm. Her actions were deliberate, each step reinforcing her authority without aggression. She spoke clearly, answered questions promptly, and maintained eye contact with the manager when necessary, asserting her presence in a subtle yet powerful way. Every gesture, every word, and every glance was part of a careful observation and measured response. Through it all, she maintained a sense of empathy. She recognized that some staff members might be acting out of nervousness or fear, rather than intentional prejudice. She treated everyone with respect, knowing that her power lay not in confrontation but in dignity, intelligence, and strategic action. She silently reminded herself that patience was a tool and that the right moment to assert her authority would come. As she prepared for the next steps, she remained aware of the larger picture. She understood the impact of her actions on the environment around her. This was more than a personal encounter. It was a chance to show strength, fairness, and leadership. Her calmness and professionalism were a quiet statement of power and resilience. The first part of this experience ended with her fully in control of her thoughts and actions, waiting for the moment when she could respond effectively to the manager's hesitation. She was prepared, aware, and determined. Nothing about her presence or her authority could be ignored, and she would ensure that her business, her dignity, and her principles were respected. This was only the beginning of a story that would turn an ordinary banking trip into an extraordinary lesson in courage, leadership, and justice. The manager finally looked up from his desk, and the hesitation in his eyes was unmistakable. He cleared his throat and tried to explain why the withdrawal could not be processed immediately. He mentioned policy checks, verification procedures, and some vague security protocols. The words were technically accurate but unnecessary. She had met all the requirements, provided every detail, and the transaction should have been routine. She noticed the subtle shift in tone, the indirect way he avoided eye contact, and the careful choice of words meant to slow her down. She remained composed, observing each movement, each glance, each pause. She politely asked him to clarify the specific reason for the delay. Her voice was calm, measured, yet firm. It was a voice that demanded attention without raising alarm. She provided her account details again, verified her identification, and reiterated the purpose of the withdrawal. Despite her professionalism, the manager continued to stall. It was as if he was hoping she would give up, leave quietly, or accept the treatment silently. She could sense the discomfort among the staff around the counter. Some whispered among themselves, glancing toward the manager, while others stared at the floor or at her with uncertain expressions. The tension was visible in the air. It was clear that the situation was becoming more than a simple transaction. It was becoming a test of patience, professionalism, and dignity. She chose to remain patient. She knew that showing frustration or anger could give the staff an excuse to act defensively, to hide behind policies, or to continue delaying the process. Instead, she took a moment to observe, noting every small detail. The way the manager's fingers drummed lightly on the desk, the slight tightening of his jaw, and the occasional glance toward other staff members all told her a story she had seen before. A story of subtle prejudice and uncertainty in the face of authority. While waiting, she thought about the irony of the situation. Here she was, a successful CEO, a woman who had built a company from the ground up, being treated as though she was unworthy of basic service at her own bank. It was a stark reminder of how bias could manifest in unexpected ways, even in places where professionalism should be the standard. She reflected on past experiences, moments when her intelligence, skill, or determination had been questioned because of her race or gender. Each memory fueled her resolve to handle this situation with grace and precision. The manager's explanation grew increasingly convoluted. He spoke about needing to cross-check account activity, confirm authorization from the head office, and adhere to new internal protocols. She responded to each point calmly, providing the necessary information and emphasizing that all requirements had already been met. She was thorough, careful, and deliberate. She wanted to ensure there could be no legitimate objection to her withdrawal. Every response she gave was calculated to show competence, professionalism, and clarity. As she spoke, she noticed the reaction of other customers. Some were curious, others confused, and a few seemed sympathetic. One person quietly recorded part of the interaction on their phone, while another whispered to a friend about the unusual scene. She was aware that her behavior was being observed, and that her reaction would leave a lasting impression. She carried herself with dignity, knowing that her calm and confident approach was not only helping her maintain control but also setting an example for others who might face similar situations. Despite the delay and the unnecessary obstacles, she remained composed. She maintained eye contact when appropriate, spoke clearly, and never raised her voice. Her body language was open and confident, yet not confrontational. She understood that true power often lies in restraint, in the ability to handle difficult situations with intelligence and poise. She projected authority without aggression, command without hostility. It was a lesson in leadership, not just for herself but for everyone present. The staff around her began to respond to her calm authority. The young teller who had seemed unsure started to look more confident, answering questions and assisting when necessary. The other employees appeared slightly relieved to see that she was handling the situation professionally. Even the manager, though still hesitant, seemed to realize that he could not continue to stall without explanation. The dynamics in the bank were shifting, slowly but surely, as her quiet determination made an impact. She also remained aware of the psychological aspects of the situation. She knew that some of the hesitation she faced was rooted in bias, discomfort, or lack of experience dealing with someone of her stature in a calm and assertive manner. She did not allow these factors to distract her or provoke a reaction. Instead, she used them to her advantage, observing carefully and planning her next steps with precision. She understood that patience and observation were powerful tools in any interaction. Time passed slowly. The manager continued to mumble about policies and procedures, while she responded with clarity and authority. She provided all necessary documentation, reiterated her intentions, and calmly pointed out the inconsistencies in his explanations. Her approach was deliberate, designed to expose the unnecessary hurdles without confrontation. She was setting the stage for a resolution that would be fair, just, and undeniable. The situation began to draw attention beyond the immediate staff. A few more customers started noticing the interaction, whispering quietly among themselves. Some seemed shocked, others curious, and a few sympathetic. She noticed these reactions but remained focused on her goal. Her presence alone was commanding respect, even if it took a moment for others to realize it. The atmosphere in the bank was charged, a mixture of tension, curiosity, and anticipation. She remained mindful of her tone, her gestures, and her expressions. She knew that every small detail mattered. Her calm authority, combined with meticulous attention to facts and professionalism, created a powerful impression. The manager's discomfort grew as he realized that stalling further was pointless. The CEO was not only competent but unwavering, and the unnecessary delay could no longer be justified. At this point, she also started to think strategically about the outcome. She was aware of her rights as a client, her status as a CEO, and the broader implications of this encounter. She recognized that her next actions would have a lasting impact. not only on the staff in the bank but also on others who might witness or hear about the situation later. She needed to balance assertiveness with diplomacy, ensuring that the resolution would be fair and respected. As the manager fumbled for explanations, she maintained a composed, professional demeanor. She asked thoughtful, precise questions, challenging vague statements without aggression. Each response she gave was designed to clarify, correct, and assert her position calmly. She demonstrated her knowledge, her authority, and her patience, making it clear that she would not be dismissed or ignored. The young teller assisting her began to mirror her professionalism, responding more confidently and supporting her requests. Other staff members were visibly affected by her calm assertiveness, realizing that their behavior had been inappropriate. She was influencing the entire environment around her, not through anger or force, but through quiet strength, composure, and clarity. By the end of the encounter in this phase, it was clear that she had maintained full control over the situation. She had responded to unnecessary obstacles with patience and professionalism, ensuring that all facts were on her side. The manager was visibly tense, other staff members were more attentive, and the atmosphere in the bank had shifted. Her calm, measured approach had set the stage for the next steps, where the principles of fairness, accountability, and authority would come into full effect. Though she had not yet achieved her goal, she was fully prepared. Her mind was sharp, her emotions steady, and her strategy clear. She knew exactly how to proceed when the moment was right. The delay, the discomfort, and the subtle prejudice had only strengthened her resolve. She understood that true power lay in knowing when and how to act, and she was ready to take the next step toward resolution, justice, and respect. After several tense minutes of unclear explanations and repeated verification requests, she decided to step aside for a moment and take a strategic pause. She remained calm, but inside her mind was analyzing every detail of the encounter. She noticed the faint glances of the staff, the subtle shift in posture, and the whispered comments that seemed to ripple through the bank. This was no longer a simple transaction. It had become a moment that tested not only her patience but also the integrity of the people around her. She moved to a quieter corner of the bank, giving the staff a chance to handle the situation without feeling cornered. Her demeanor remained composed, yet her eyes were sharp, observing every reaction and every small movement. She watched the manager fumble through his papers, his nervous energy almost palpable. His repeated glances toward the door indicated he was looking for an escape from the awkwardness he had created. She remained quiet, letting him feel the weight of responsibility, while planning her next step carefully. Her assistant, who had been waiting outside, walked up quietly and handed her a few documents she might need for verification. She thanked the assistant with a nod, and together they quickly checked every detail. She made sure everything was accurate and ready to present if needed. She knew that preparation and knowledge were her strongest allies in this moment. She wanted to ensure there was no legitimate reason the manager or staff could use to continue delaying her withdrawal. As she reviewed the documents, she observed the reactions of other customers. Some were curious, others appeared concerned, and a few whispered quietly among themselves. She realized that her calm and authoritative presence had a subtle but powerful effect on the room. Even those who were not directly involved seemed to sense that something important was unfolding. Her composure inspired attention and respect, a quiet but undeniable influence over everyone present. She also noticed a few people discreetly recording or taking notes on their phones. It was clear that her encounter with the bank staff was unusual enough to capture attention. She did not mind this. She understood that documenting events could sometimes provide accountability when bias or inappropriate behavior occurred. Still, she remained focused on the task at hand, ensuring that the attention of bystanders did not distract her from her goal. Her thoughts turned inward for a moment, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the long hours of building her business, the challenges she had faced as a woman in leadership, and the countless obstacles she had overcome. Each experience had taught her patience, resilience, and the importance of handling adversity with intelligence and grace. These memories strengthened her resolve as she prepared to address the situation with the manager. She could feel the tension in the air as the manager approached her again, his expression hesitant and unsure. He attempted to repeat his earlier explanation, but this time she was ready. She calmly responded, pointing out that all necessary documentation had been provided, and that the repeated delays were unnecessary and unjustified. She maintained a measured tone, emphasizing professionalism while asserting her rights as a customer. Her approach left no room for evasion or excuses. The staff around the counter began to shift subtly, sensing that the situation was reaching a turning point. Some looked more confident, perhaps inspired by her composed approach. Others appeared uneasy, realizing that the CEO was fully aware of the unnecessary obstacles she faced and would not tolerate further delay. The dynamic in the room was changing. Her patience and strategic pause had given her the advantage, allowing her to observe, understand, and prepare for the confrontation ahead. While waiting for the next interaction, she also considered the broader implications of the situation. She understood that moments like these were not just about personal experience. They were about challenging systemic bias and creating accountability. She wanted to handle the encounter in a way that was fair, just, and respectful, but also firm enough to prevent similar treatment for herself or others in the future. She was aware that her actions would leave an impression far beyond the walls of the bank. Her mind remained sharp and focused. She mentally rehearsed the key points she would raise when addressing the manager: the unnecessary delay, the lack of clear explanation, and the expectation of professional conduct. She considered the language she would use, ensuring that it was firm but respectful, assertive but not confrontational. She understood the importance of controlling the narrative and guiding the conversation toward resolution, without escalating tension unnecessarily. At the same time, she remained observant of the subtle psychological behaviors at play. She noticed the slight shifts in body language, the brief fidgeting, and the micro-expressions that revealed discomfort or hesitation. These cues told her that the manager and staff were aware of the inappropriateness of their actions, even if they had not yet admitted it. She used this knowledge to plan her next move, understanding that awareness of others' reactions could be a powerful tool in achieving a fair outcome. She also maintained her outward appearance of calm and professionalism, ensuring that her body language, tone, and expressions conveyed authority without aggression. Her presence alone commanded respect and attention, making it clear that she was not an ordinary customer to be dismissed or delayed. The quiet confidence she exuded was a deliberate strategy, reinforcing her position while keeping the environment controlled and focused. As she continued to observe, she reflected on the importance of empathy and understanding in moments of conflict. She recognized that fear, discomfort, or lack of experience might have contributed to the staff's behavior. She chose not to respond with anger, but instead with patience, clarity, and strategic action. Her approach demonstrated that true leadership required not only knowledge and authority, but also emotional intelligence and the ability to navigate complex social situations effectively. The minutes stretched, yet she remained composed, understanding that timing was crucial. She knew that patience now would allow her to act decisively when the moment was right. She was in control of her emotions, her thoughts, and her actions. Each decision was deliberate, aimed at achieving a resolution that was fair, professional, and dignified. She was ready to turn this encounter into an opportunity to assert her authority and uphold her principles. She watched as the manager and staff grew increasingly aware of her focus and determination. The tension in the room was palpable, a mixture of anticipation, curiosity, and recognition of the unusual situation. Her calm yet assertive presence had shifted the dynamic, creating an environment where accountability could no longer be ignored. The staff understood that further delay or evasion would reflect poorly on their professionalism and integrity. Throughout this pause, she maintained her attention to detail, ensuring that every aspect of the interaction was carefully documented and observed. She knew that her actions would be remembered and potentially shared, setting an example for how to handle bias and unprofessional behavior effectively. Her strategic pause had not been a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of foresight, preparation, and calculated patience. As the situation reached its peak, she felt a quiet sense of readiness. She had gathered all necessary information, observed all relevant behaviors, and prepared herself mentally and emotionally for the next phase. Her patience had strengthened her position, allowing her to approach the upcoming confrontation with confidence and clarity. She understood that her response would set the tone for the resolution and for the lesson that the staff would carry forward. This strategic pause had also provided a moment for reflection, reinforcing her understanding of leadership, dignity, and the importance of handling adversity with grace. She was not only navigating a challenging situation, but also demonstrating the qualities that had made her successful: intelligence, patience, composure, and strategic thinking. She was ready to act decisively, ensuring that fairness and accountability would prevail. As she prepared to return to the counter, she took a deep breath and centered herself. Her focus was sharp, her resolve unshakable, and her presence commanding. She understood the importance of timing and the power of calm authority. She was prepared to move forward, confident that the next steps would lead to a resolution that upheld her dignity and set a precedent for professionalism, respect, and fairness. This moment was not just about a banking transaction. It was about asserting her rights, her authority, and her values in a world that too often underestimated her. She stepped forward, ready to face the next challenge with the same unwavering determination that had brought her success in every aspect of her life. She returned to the counter with a steady, measured pace. Her eyes met the manager's, and she could see a flicker of awareness in his expression. He had realized, perhaps too late, that she was fully prepared and would not tolerate further delay or evasion. Her calm authority filled the space around her, creating a quiet tension that was almost palpable. She was ready to address the situation directly, firmly, and without hostility. She began by restating the facts, clearly and calmly. She reminded the manager that she had provided all necessary documentation, verified her identification, and followed every protocol required by the bank. She highlighted the unnecessary delays, the vague explanations, and the lack of professional conduct. Each point was made with precision, leaving no room for misinterpretation or excuse. Her voice was calm but carried weight, reflecting both authority and composure. The manager shifted uncomfortably, realizing that his previous attempts to stall were ineffective. He tried to respond with another vague explanation, but she stopped him politely yet firmly. She made it clear that his behavior was inappropriate and that it was unacceptable for a client, regardless of status or wealth, to be treated with hesitation or bias. Her words were deliberate, measured, and undeniable. She spoke with the clarity of someone accustomed to leadership and accountability. The staff around the counter were visibly affected. Some had started to understand the seriousness of the situation, while others seemed relieved to see a professional handling things without anger or confrontation. Even the other customers began to take notice, sensing that this encounter was more than a routine transaction. Her calm but assertive demeanor commanded respect, and the subtle shift in energy was noticeable to everyone in the room. She continued, emphasizing the importance of fairness and professional behavior. She explained that clients trust the bank to provide services without unnecessary obstacles or hesitation. She highlighted her long-standing relationship with the institution and her contributions as a loyal and high-value customer. Each statement reinforced her position while maintaining respect for the people around her. Her focus was on correcting the behavior, not creating conflict. The manager attempted to justify his actions by referencing internal policies, but she had anticipated this. She responded by calmly explaining that the protocols she had been asked to follow were already completed and verified. She gently but firmly pointed out the inconsistencies in his statements, showing that his explanations did not align with the facts. Her knowledge and preparation were evident, leaving little room for him to continue stalling. As the conversation progressed, she also addressed the broader impact of the situation. She reminded the manager that professional conduct and respect are not only matters of policy, but also reflect the reputation of the bank. She highlighted that treating clients fairly and consistently is crucial for trust and long-term relationships. Her words were delivered without accusation, but with the weight of authority and clarity that made the message impossible to ignore. The manager's discomfort grew as he realized that he could no longer hide behind vague explanations or procedures. His attempts to redirect the conversation or minimize the issue were met with precise and thoughtful responses. She maintained her calm, ensuring that the conversation remained focused on facts and solutions rather than emotion or confrontation. Her composure was a powerful tool, influencing the entire environment and guiding the interaction toward accountability. She observed the subtle reactions of the staff as she spoke. Some began to nod slightly, acknowledging the truth in her words, while others exchanged brief, uncertain glances. The young teller who had seemed unsure earlier now stood attentively, assisting where needed and showing professionalism in response to her calm authority. The dynamics in the bank had shifted entirely. The CEO's presence and measured approach had transformed the situation into one where fairness and respect were being demanded naturally. Throughout the discussion, she maintained a sense of empathy. She recognized that fear, uncertainty, or lack of experience may have contributed to the staff's initial hesitation, yet she also made it clear that accountability and professional behavior were non-negotiable. She balanced firmness with understanding, demonstrating leadership that was both assertive and human-centered. Her approach reinforced the idea that authority can be exercised without aggression, and that respect is earned through clarity, preparation, and composure. She also used the opportunity to reinforce her expectations. She calmly outlined the steps that should be taken to resolve the immediate issue, ensuring that her withdrawal could be processed without further delay. She explained the importance of transparency, communication, and adherence to professional standards. Her language was clear, concise, and respectful, leaving no room for misunderstanding or further hesitation. The manager and staff listened attentively, realizing that the situation required immediate correction. By this point, the tension in the room was noticeable. Other customers had stopped what they were doing to observe the interaction. Some seemed impressed, others surprised, and a few were quietly recording or taking notes. She remained focused on the manager, ensuring that the resolution was achieved efficiently and professionally. Her ability to remain composed under pressure demonstrated both her authority and her commitment to fairness. The manager finally acknowledged the validity of her points, albeit reluctantly. He realized that the unnecessary delays, vague explanations, and hesitations could not be justified. She responded with a nod of acknowledgement, maintaining her professionalism while signaling that the conversation was moving toward closure. The atmosphere in the bank had shifted entirely. Her calm authority had transformed a tense, uncertain situation into one where accountability and respect were now the guiding principles. She then addressed the staff collectively, emphasizing the importance of professionalism and respect in every client interaction. She spoke of fairness, clarity, and the responsibility each employee has to ensure that clients feel valued and respected. Her words were firm yet encouraging, demonstrating that accountability and guidance can be delivered without hostility. The staff listened, understanding that this encounter was both a lesson and a reminder of the standards expected in their roles. As the discussion concluded, she ensured that all necessary steps were in place for her withdrawal to be processed immediately. She had maintained control of the situation, asserting her authority and principles without anger or confrontation. The manager and staff had recognized the errors in their behavior and the need to correct them promptly. Her approach had reinforced the values of fairness, professionalism, and respect, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. Throughout this phase, she had remained fully in control of her thoughts, actions, and emotions. Her preparation, observation, and strategic approach had allowed her to navigate a complex situation effectively. She had turned an encounter that could have been humiliating into a demonstration of leadership, composure, and accountability. The outcome was not only a personal victory but also a lesson in professional conduct for the staff and a reminder of the importance of dignity in every interaction. As she stepped back, she reflected on the experience. She had used patience, intelligence, and calm authority to achieve a fair resolution. She had addressed bias and hesitation without confrontation, maintained her composure under pressure, and ensured that her rights and dignity were respected. The encounter had demonstrated that true leadership involves clarity, preparation, and the ability to influence others through calm, deliberate action. She had not only achieved her immediate goal but also set a standard for professionalism and respect that would resonate beyond the walls of the bank. By the end of this confrontation, the CEO had turned a moment of unnecessary resistance into a clear statement of authority and principle. The manager understood the consequences of his actions, the staff recognized the importance of professionalism, and the other customers witnessed the power of composed, confident leadership. She had navigated the situation with skill, demonstrating that fairness, dignity, and respect can be upheld even in challenging circumstances. The resolution was complete, yet the lessons from this encounter would continue to influence the environment and the people involved long after she had left. After the manager acknowledged the errors in his conduct and promised to process her withdrawal immediately, she took a moment to observe the staff and the atmosphere around her. There was a subtle shift in the energy of the room. The staff who had been hesitant and uncertain now moved with more confidence, their demeanor reflecting a mixture of respect and awareness. She noticed the young teller, who had seemed nervous at the beginning, now assisting efficiently, demonstrating professionalism that had been missing just moments before. She allowed herself a small, satisfied smile, not of triumph but of acknowledgement that her calm persistence and strategic approach had yielded results. She had maintained her dignity throughout the encounter, never raising her voice or displaying anger. Yet she had asserted her authority with clarity and precision. The room, once tense and awkward, now held a sense of order and understanding, as if her presence had silently reminded everyone of the importance of respect, accountability, and professionalism. Once her withdrawal was successfully processed, she quietly reviewed the documents and confirmed that everything was in order. There was no need for any additional confrontation. She had achieved her objective, but the experience had become much more than a simple banking transaction. It had become a lesson in leadership, patience, and the power of calm, deliberate action in the face of bias and hesitation. She decided to address the staff one final time before leaving. With a gentle yet firm tone, she spoke about the importance of professionalism, fairness, and treating every client with respect. She emphasized that their behavior reflected not only on themselves, but on the reputation of the institution as a whole. Her words were direct but considerate, aimed at fostering growth and understanding rather than inducing fear or resentment. She wanted the staff to learn from the encounter, to understand the impact of their actions, and to carry this understanding into their future interactions. The staff listened attentively, some nodding in agreement, others exchanging glances that suggested reflection. The manager, in particular, seemed to grasp the gravity of the lesson. His posture straightened, and he appeared more aware of the responsibility he held in ensuring that clients were treated fairly and respectfully. She did not dwell on his mistakes, but she made it clear that accountability and professionalism were essential qualities that could not be compromised. The other customers who had been observing the situation continued to watch quietly. Some appeared impressed, others perhaps inspired. She understood that her composure, authority, and clarity had left an impression that extended beyond the immediate interaction. By handling the situation with intelligence and patience, she had not only resolved the issue at hand, but also demonstrated a model of leadership that could influence others, both within the bank and among those who had witnessed the event. As she prepared to leave, she took a final moment to reflect on the experience. She realized that the incident had reinforced her own values and principles. It had reminded her of the importance of remaining calm under pressure, of observing carefully before acting, and of addressing injustice with clarity and dignity. She had demonstrated that power and authority could be exercised without aggression, and that fairness and respect were principles worth upholding in every situation. Stepping out of the bank, she felt a renewed sense of accomplishment. The morning sun had climbed higher in the sky, casting a warm light on the streets of the city. She walked with her usual confidence, but now there was a quiet satisfaction in her stride. The encounter, though challenging, had become a testament to her resilience, intelligence, and leadership. She had turned an uncomfortable and potentially humiliating situation into a moment of clarity, accountability, and growth. As she moved through the streets, she thought about the ripple effects of her actions. The staff she had interacted with would carry the lesson forward, applying it in future situations with other clients. The manager, having experienced a direct yet respectful confrontation, would likely reconsider how he approached similar circumstances. Even the other customers who had witnessed the interaction would have absorbed the demonstration of calm authority and professional conduct. She had influenced the environment not through confrontation, but through presence, clarity, and deliberate action. She also reflected on the broader societal implications. The incident had highlighted the subtle biases and unnecessary obstacles that can appear in everyday interactions, even in professional settings. She realized that by handling the situation effectively, she had not only protected her own rights, but had also set an example for fairness and dignity that could inspire others. Her approach demonstrated that challenges, no matter how small they might seem, could be opportunities for leadership and influence. The CEO's mind was clear and focused as she continued on her way. She felt a sense of pride, not in asserting power over others, but in demonstrating the strength of patience, observation, and strategic action. She had turned a moment of resistance into a demonstration of authority, teaching a lesson in respect and accountability without hostility or confrontation. Her approach reinforced the idea that true leadership is rooted in clarity, composure, and the ability to influence others through intelligent, measured action. She thought about the values that had guided her throughout her career: integrity, perseverance, and fairness. These principles had guided her through the encounter at the bank, allowing her to navigate a potentially humiliating situation with grace. She understood that leadership is not only about success in business or wealth, but also about how one responds to challenges and upholds principles in everyday life. This experience had reinforced those values and strengthened her resolve to continue setting an example in all aspects of her life. As she reached her car, she paused to take a deep breath, feeling the weight of the morning's events lift. She had accomplished her goal, asserted her authority, and demonstrated the power of calm, deliberate action. The encounter would remain in her memory, not as a moment of frustration or insult, but as a testament to the effectiveness of patience, intelligence, and professionalism. She knew that she had handled the situation in a way that upheld her dignity and reinforced her values. Driving away from the bank, she felt a sense of quiet satisfaction and empowerment. The incident had not only tested her patience and leadership, but it also provided an opportunity to influence others positively. She had turned a challenging situation into a lesson in authority, respect, and accountability. The CEO knew that such moments, though difficult, were integral to personal growth and the exercise of effective leadership. By the time she reached her next destination, the lessons of the morning had settled deeply in her mind. She had demonstrated that challenges could be met with calm authority, strategic action, and professional clarity. She had addressed bias and hesitation without anger, maintained her composure under pressure, and ensured that fairness and respect prevailed. The experience had become a reaffirmation of her values and an example of leadership that could inspire others. As she walked into her next meeting, she carried with her the quiet confidence that comes from handling adversity effectively. She knew that the events at the bank would leave a lasting impression, not just on the staff and customers who had witnessed them, but also on herself. She had turned a moment of challenge into an opportunity for influence, reflection, and the reinforcement of principles that mattered deeply to her. The encounter had ended, but the lessons, the impact, and the demonstration of strength and dignity would remain far beyond that morning. The day continued, but the quiet victory of the morning stayed with her. She knew that by remaining calm, observant, and strategic, she had achieved more than a simple transaction. She had set a standard-influenced behavior and reinforced the importance of fairness and respect. This was leadership in action, a reminder that strength is often shown not through confrontation but through composed, intelligent, and principled action. She had faced a challenge, asserted her authority, and emerged with dignity intact, leaving a lasting impression on all those who had witnessed the moment. The bank, the staff, and the bystanders would carry the lessons forward, and she, as always, moved on with her life, empowered by the experience and strengthened by the knowledge that she had acted with clarity, purpose, and unwavering integrity.